Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Thursday, the 10th of August 2017, and we are playing an unedited copy of a telephone discussion we have just had with Greg concerning the conflict between the United States and North Korea and its potential impact on the price of gold and silver. We hope you enjoy it, and please accept our apologies for the poor sound quality, as it was literally taped over the telephone. Greg, good morning. My apologies for calling you at this ungodly hour of 1:20 a.m. Thursday morning GMT. However, we have been monitoring the news reports and also feeds from Reuters that the situation in North Korea is intensifying. We have heard in the last couple of days President Trump threaten North Korea. We have seen the gold price rise, not dramatically, but a few percent, and silver a few percent in the last few days, when we were expecting both of them to fall, and therefore, of course, the precious metals market are responding to these threats. What's your view?
I think, to quote a well-known saying of a British politician of yesteryear, events, dear boy, events. The American president has been saber-rattling and rising to the bait thrown on the water by Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who is a notorious idiot. Unfortunate to see Trump dealing in the same suit of cards. I'm not surprised that the gold, which one could reasonably have expected to stay static or fall a little, has in fact risen, albeit by not a lot, somewhere at the moment in the region of $20 on gold and 60 cents on silver, which can hardly be described as fortune-making in terms of percentage, but it is a rise when otherwise one could have foreseen quite reasonably static or slight fall.
Well, we were actually predicting over the course of the August holiday period, gold actually falling below $1,200 and silver falling well below $16 and heading towards the $15 mark. Now, all of our analysis suggested this, and the only thing that we can see, or the two areas that we can see, is the slight weakness in the dollar, which is propping up the value of gold and silver, and that in itself, to a large degree, has been further affected, of course, by North Korea, which was a warning we put out to our subscribers that this was going to be the only real fly in the ointment that we could see on the horizon that would keep gold and silver in a buoyant state.
I think at the moment President Trump has proved to be another fly in the ointment, and it's beginning to be a little bit like Garibaldi biscuits. There's an awful lot of flies in it.
Right, yes. But on that point, in fairness, now, we've been quite critical of President Trump, but in fairness, he has already been responsible for amassing a group of countries adopting embargoes on North Korea at various forms of trade sanctions, which will certainly hurt their economy. And he's achieved that with much credit in the media. And yet, North Korea, well, North Korea is still, yet again, sort of threatening Guam and basically saying that they have the resource now to attack it with nuclear weapons. So, of course, President Trump is going to come out with something to warn them, beware. Now, how realistic is his warning? What are the real chances of him actually attacking North Korea?
In real terms, even North Korea realizes that somewhere in the region of 30% of the landmass of Guam is U.S. military.
Yes.
It is a heavily armed base. I think it's, I can't remember, it's 4 or 5 bases on the island, amounting to the best part of a third of the land mass.
Right.
This is an area that would hardly be described as a soft target.
Mm-hmm.
The North Korean regime is being pushed with its own rhetoric, and unfortunately, North Korea having thrown bait on the water for internal consumption. It is a country of poverty, misery, and utter state control, kept there by fear of a common enemy, the great shibboleth of America.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the leader talks up all forms of problem with America to distract from the grievous misery of the peoples of North Korea and find someone to blame other than his own utter incompetence.
Yes.
As soon as you are hearing reports back from America, from America's head of state,
Mm-hmm.
that sound almost as bellicose and as foolish as that of North Korea,
Yes.
he is in the perfect position to say to his own people in North Korea, I told you so. These people want to attack us.
Right.
So, by joining in this sort of playground bullying, rather than using intelligent diplomacy, which has always been used in the past whenever North Korea has been running off at the mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and has downplayed the situation, America has played straight into the hands of North Korea this time. Do I think Donald Trump will attack? To be honest, I don't think that he ultimately would be that foolish. And wiser counsel within his government, probably the day before they get fired for saying something he didn't like, will advise that North Korea is believed to have, by American intelligence, who've announced they believe North Korea to have some 60 warheads.
Right.
Those 60 warheads only need one warhead to get through. For it to be an utter failure on the part of America in the eyes of everybody in the world. However many times America manages to hit North Korea.
But if they don't do something, the argument goes they'll have 60 today, they'll have 100 tomorrow, they'll have 1,000 in a couple of years' time.
And 100 tomorrow, because
Yes.
they are being primed by America's bellicose talk in exactly the direction that the North Korean regime wishes to take the country in, which is to arm more heavily to keep their industrial exercise going. Bear in mind that about the only people in North Korea who get to eat a decent meal each day are the military and the government.
Right.
And therefore, the bigger the military in North Korea, the happier the government is. And the bigger the government, the more able they are to manage a bigger military. This is a country where many of their people die of starvation, and the regime is utterly indifferent.
Well,
They don't mind how many people die.
well, with that in mind, what is to stop North Korea increasing its nuclear arsenal, and one day actually then launching those nukes, whether it be on America or any of the allies, or on some of their other enemies, such as South Korea, for example?
We do not know for certain that they are capable of it. Yes, they can make a few whiz-bangs go up in the sky and fly quite long distances.
The intelligence services have said that they...
Intelligence services say they have 60 warheads.
Yes.
They think that they have managed to mount one on a rocket.
Right.
But they're not certain of it. It is far better off, now that we have the United Nations unanimity, which is a rare commodity,
Yes.
on the side,
And credit must be given to Trump for that, to be fair.
and to a number of his allies
Yes.
who stood by him when, realistically, it's quite dangerous to stand by him at the moment,
Right.
as can be shown by his White House staff, most of whom are being fired on a weekly basis.
Yes. Yes. So you believe the likelihood of Trump launching any form of military action is extremely remote?
I believe that even if Trump was foolish enough to do so, wiser minds on the Hill,
Yes.
and definitely better informed minds in the military will say this is not a good move.
Now, we received some notification earlier this evening that, and we haven't verified this, so it's just an initial contact, that our own armed services have slightly raised their what's the word I'm looking for, their
State of readiness.
state of readiness. So clearly,
Yes, this would be a completely logical thing to do.
yes,
And on top of that, almost despite Trump
yes,
and the bellicose nature and volatile nature of his present regime, where he doesn't seem to be able to hang on to very many staff,
no,
he has managed so far to do almost nothing through Congress, and where his only answer to most things would have to be that he used the Democratic Party the Republican Party quite cynically to get himself into power, and he will make the pretense that now he's in power, he is draining the swamp. Now, he's hardly draining the swamp when he's filling all the offices with his own people, and then finding he has to fire them too.
But going back, because I want this snippet to focus on North Korea, and of course the rising price in gold and silver, albeit not great at this moment. If, as you say, he is unlikely to launch anything against North Korea, then of course we can expect the price of gold and silver to fall back.
No, we'll readiness for some time as a result. That will continue to exacerbate the lack of confidence in other money markets, and it could well lead to a slow but steady rise in gold and silver.
So how do you see this panning out over the next week or so?
I think gold will continue to raise at the same sort of level, nothing spectacular, but I think it will continue to go up because people who are in a sell position on other assets,
yes,
exchange-wise and the like, will feel that money is very volatile because it depends who's on which side at what time of day, and they may well put their money into the safe hedge of holding it in gold, which will push up the price for during this period of uncertainty.
So do you think then that the rhetoric now between President Trump and the leader of North Korea, do you see the rhetoric there increasing, bearing in mind it's already reached that sort of almost red line level?
I would submit that you will already see that the military advisors within the White House team
yes,
are playing down Trump's statement, firstly saying that this was made off the cuff and as an impromptu statement, and even his subsequent tweets, which can at times be verging on the crass, have shown signs of ameliorating his initial threat.
right.
I don't think that Trump has ever had to deal in business with somebody quite as unpredictable as the leader of North Korea. He may have had numerous corporations of his own that weren't financially viable, but I don't think it has ever been in his experience to be totally non-financially viable on all fronts and be able to employ slave labor.
Well, okay. Well, we can see that you're not a fan of President Trump, and that's fine. But the concern,
I'm not a fan of amateurs.
no. But the concern is, are his generals powerful enough to prevent him? Now, bearing in mind he may be as loose a cannon as you claim him to be, are his generals powerful enough to actually prevent him from launching a potential war?
The question is more a case of, do I consider that Donald Trump still thinks that he's running a game show? And I think the reality is dawning that it's all a little bit more serious than being able to say you're fired on once a week on the weekly episode of the game show. And I think that although his language has been bellicose and I would submit poorly thought through, it has been made, as is his wont, for effect on his home audience. We see a president here who is running the entire White House and the governance of America based on the campaigning model on the stump. And every time he has a problem with the actual process of governance, immediately repairs to over-the-top, quite normal, but over-the-top campaigning methods of American politics as a distraction therapy. Whether the distraction therapy is for his own benefit, but I would rather hope that he isn't quite as mad as Kim Il-sung, who tends to do things because he feels better about them, or whether it is an intelligent, designed move to distract the audience from the events that are going on in government, or should I say lack of events, when it comes to governing the United States, because do bear in mind that in the 6 months he's been in power, he is being spectacularly unsuccessful at getting anything through Congress, and he seems to be losing the support of even those who got him into power.
Well, that's for another debate, because his team will argue to a large extent that's fake news, making up poll figures.
That it was fake news, that it's Thursday morning.
Yeah, but coming back to this scenario, do you regard it as a serious situation, or do you just think it's two world leaders blowing rhetoric at each other, and it will all eventually come to naught?
I would wish that I could count on sanity prevailing. With two volatile, seemingly ego-driven leaders, both with immense power at their disposition. There are many saying, well known, about measurements of anatomy that would seem to have the pair of them summed up.
The reason you're being asked this, Greg, is that our analysis shows that gold and silver should be going down. It's actually marginally, admittedly, creeping up. If this rhetoric increases, and if the likelihood of a military attack becomes not just a likelihood but a reality, then we will see their prices soar. And
I think we can take it in an even shorter term than that. If you were predicting that it would go down by $40 or $50,
yes,
and it's gone up by 20,
yes,
and the real rise is 70.
yes.
And when you start to look at it as $70 rise, it becomes more noticeable. Because we have to look at opportunity costs on that money. And if it was expected to go down, and it has actually gone up, you must add those two figures together to show the real rise.
But we were slight contrarians to some of the traders who thought that it might go up a little, though one or two of the spokespeople on Kitco News actually have thought that it might fall, and were quite impressed by the fact that it has maintained its price, for the simple reason the stock market's going through the roof, and basically the cost of holding gold is obviously greater because other assets were giving a better capital gain.
Yeah, you were getting a good run for your money on the stock market, but it was quite reasonable to predict that it was going to fall, and I would submit those who said it was going to rise can hardly pat themselves on the back now that it has risen.
Well, it burst through the 20...
Simply because they didn't know Korea was going to happen.
Yes.
Weren't they lucky?
Yes. Yes.
It has made their predictions look good.
Well, we still believe it's going to go eventually through 23,000. Unless, of course, North Korea does happen and there is a war, and then we will see a significant fall. Certainly in the first few days of that conflict. So our advice then at this moment, and we're going to have to round this up because this is becoming quite a long sort of conversation. The advice at the moment is keep your eye on North Korea. It can go either way, but it is more likely not to develop into something than to develop into something. That is what you're saying. Is that correct?
I would, on a 0 to 10, I would put it at a 7 that it won't happen.
Right. Greg, thank you very...
But that other 3
yes.
is quite perturbing enough for me, thank you.
So are you buying gold at this level then?
At my age, I really don't buy anything for a long-term punt.
Okay. Greg, thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Can I go to bed now?
You can. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. So there we have it. Greg's opinion is that there is a 70% chance that there will not be a conflict, a military conflict with North Korea. Though the newspapers are hyping this up somewhat and the various media outlets. It is indeed possible that there could be military conflict without it necessarily reverting to a nuclear one. But one would like to think, to some extent, that both parties are intelligent enough to realise that with such a conflict, it is only the ordinary people who will be the true sufferers within that environment. At the time of producing this video, which is a little after 1:45 a.m., the price of gold currently stands at $1,274 and the price of silver at $16.89. We hope you have found this video interesting and informative. And if so, please give it a thumb up and share it on Twitter. Also kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe as a free member for regular email updates and offers. Our Facebook page, which is updated regularly, can be found at facebook.com/illuminatisilver. Disclaimer. Illuminati silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.